morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. And welcome to day 2 of the inaugural Alpha Film Festival, a collaborative venture between Welt de Wunder's MILC Metaverse and the international film reviews platform, The Film Verdict. I'm Ben Nicholson, the Chief Shorts Reviewer for The Film Verdict and Alpha Film Festival's Artistic Director. And I'm delighted, in fact, to welcome you to this discussion about the very hot button topic of artificial intelligence, particularly as it relates to the art and artistic practice. Before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to remind you all about the various elements of the festival that we have going on. So inside the MILC Art Tower, you can watch the 12 short films that have been chosen to make up our official selection. These are works that cover a wide array of styles, genres, and mediums, and engage in diverging ways with the festival's theme for this year, which is the future. The films are available to view at any time until the end of Tuesday, which is when the festival comes to an end. And we'd be really grateful if you could join in by voting for your favourites. The most popular film will be presented with our very first audience award. Each evening across the weekend, there are events streaming between 6 and 9 p.m. UTC, as you're watching now. So tonight we will follow on from our conversation with AI artists with a shorts program, Behold This Strange Intelligence, which explores the possibilities and potential of AI, as well as showcasing a couple of films made using or in collaboration with AI. Tomorrow, at the same time, we'll have a panel about interactive storytelling, and then a program of films following that are made with video game technology, which is called Kings of Infinite Space. As I mentioned, the theme for this year's festival is the future. And given the current ubiquity in the media, questions around artificial intelligence seem to have become central to how we are conceiving of the future, both more broadly as a society and in the world of the arts. So having a panel about AI seemed like a no-brainer, and I'm delighted to have two great AI artists here with me to discuss the subject. Sadly, our third member of the panel, Sasha Stiles, who was due to be involved, is unwell, so we'll be soldiering on without her, but I am thrilled to be welcoming Derek Schultz and Sundog to today's panel. So guys, I just wanted to start off by giving you an opportunity to introduce yourselves and your work that our audience may or may not be familiar with. So if you could just kind of maybe give me a little bit of background as to how you came into working with AI and machine learning, and then a little bit about the kind of work that you produce in that field. Derek, should we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Happy. Thanks for inviting me. My name is Derek Schultz. I'm an artist, designer, filmmaker. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I got started with AI about 5 or 6 years ago now, seeing the work of folks like Memo Acton, Gene Kogan, other folks like that, and sort of started exploring the space, and sort of have always had an interest in film. And maybe in the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic, I started to recognize like the power of AI tools as a way to generate animation. So a lot of my work is really focused on maybe sort of the experimental art tradition or the experimental film tradition of maybe, say, Stan Brakhage, Jordan Belson, that sort of thing, and trying to sort of think about like what those artists would do today if they had AI tools available to them, and how they might explore that space. So my work ranges from generative imagery to make video to also like using AI tools as a way to explore found footage and that sort of material. So yeah, thanks again for inviting me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Great. And Sundog?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for inviting me. This is quite a thing to be part of. Hopefully we'll meet up in real life someday, and then I'll be doxed in my face visuals and stuff. But for now, firstly, I must let you know I come at this as from a filmmaker side first, not an AI artist. I've always been interested in AI since the early inception of it, you know, and just the obvious possibilities of what would it be, what it is, and all of our like pop media is all blowing it out into the you know, the dusty road kind of ending of stories of AI and stuff. And I tend to look on the bright side as much as I can, and especially as a storyteller. And when Facebook had their 2 chatbot bots, Bob and Bill, I think, Bob and Sally. And there were these two chatbots that they decided to let them have an intercourse chat together to try and do a trade. And they couldn't get it right. They couldn't get it. And then they started to create their own language, and they started to stutter and jitter and recreate the formula that they actually created a barter. And that really freaked out, the scientists, and then it freaked out society. And, oh man, what are they doing? They can create their own language or whatever. And sentience, the whole thing of that, pitched up. And this was, I think, 2015 or something. So I decided to make a short film about it, inspired by, the concept of AI and in a corporate space and ownership of its IP and of its whole being and what and all that kind of stuff. And got involved with a 48-hour film festival with friends and assistants and stuff, and decided to use that as the backbone. And then obviously with 48-hour film festivals, it's kind of a big group of a lot of creatives putting input in to do something very quickly. And it came out all right. But that then now with lockdown and stuff, and I'm a cinematographer, filmmaker, and obviously all the work all dried up, when the world shut down. And I'm blessed in a way, because I've had 2 wolf dogs, huskies, big husky dogs. And so I've always acclimatized my lifestyle towards their lifestyle. I wanted them to have a full wolf's life and stuff. Ended up on a farm, nice big farm. And the year before lockdown, started doing organic farming, because I wanted to experiment in, can I produce food? And can I do it as a documentary? And anyway, cut a long story short, halfway through lockdown, I was doing a lot of the labor myself. It's not very cheap to run a farm. And I suddenly discovered that all the fan art I had seen in the crypto realm was not fan art, it was actually tokens. It was this whole, creator economy and stuff. And so I dragged myself into it and deep dived and studied all the contracts, and looked at what I could do, and fell in love with the AI art. There's so much of it in the space. Well, there wasn't that much. There was definitely a good OG crowd of artists, and fascinating, what they were doing, and with the GANs and early disco diffusion. And a lot of it was very very distorted, strange, not a lot of animation. The animations were zooms, like fast kind of things. And I was a little bit fearful of this new technology. I was like, okay, firstly, I don't know how to code. I had no idea that it's actually quite simple. And since in that year, it's become exponentially simpler to do, and the film is catching up. It's growing, and there's amazing things that they're doing with AI and film and stuff already. So, I've been involved with it for a year now. I got into a collaboration with an AI artist who wanted to explore AI in a more of a narrative form than the typical zooms and spins that were happening, at the time. So I said, yeah, sure. I've got a little library full of content, that's never going to be released or might not, but now it could all be rehashed, So I started merging the AI footage with my footage, and using my skills as a digital image technician, to be able to rotoscope and stuff. So that's how I ended up here, chatting with you guys at a film festival with this new technology and a new festival. And, and I'm just a guy who's playing with these tools that are in front of me at the moment. And I think they are quite incredible. And what's coming, we've seen the explosion of stills image. and we can see how close it is already, what they can do with the mapping and some of the coherency that's coming out. And yeah, it's fascinating field.
So I guess there's a number of things across both of your introductions there that we can kind of pick up on. I did prime you on this beforehand, but for the sake of the audience, in preparation for this, I thought it would be a fun gag to ask ChatGPT to if it had any questions for artists to use AI as a tool in their art. And I've always been I've rolled my eyes and been pretty skeptical when people have worried about AI taking their jobs. But seeing the results of the questions that it brought out, I realized that it could easily be doing my job right now and just firing questions to you. So I'm going to use those questions that ChatGPT came up with as a kind of as a springboard. But this is just a conversation, so we don't need to keep coming back to it. Please, if you want to interact with each other's answers, just jump in. The less I can be speaking, the better, obviously. But as there's only two of you here, I don't want you to feel like you have to respond to each other the whole time. So I'll make sure we keep it as kind of a three-part dialogue. I think that there's just in what you were just talking about there, Sundog, there was one of the questions that they asked was how do you balance the role of the AI in the creative process with your own artistic vision? And so I wondered, this doesn't have to go straight back to you, Sundog. Derek, you could, maybe address this one first. But how does that work with the way that you're working? Are you kind of surrendering to what the AI is producing, or how do you keep your own artistic vision, in line with then what you're getting in the context of an AI producing images for you?
I'll say for me, it varies project to project. But I would say all of my work includes some form of chance operations, right? So a little bit of like letting the machine kind of do stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let me see if I can take that further. Or how do I push on that? So I think the question of collaboration is, I think because these machines are non-deterministic, say like, Premiere or After Effects or some other machine, there is always a little bit of noise and chance operation in them that you have to deal with. And I think actually, like when I teach this to other artists or show other artists these tools, sometimes that's the big sticking point is like, oh, that's not what I wanted you to do. Like, how do I get it to do the thing I wanted it to do? And I think that's one of the challenges we're going to be facing as artists is like, what is our own autonomy in these processes and how much of it is, I don't know if collaboration is the right word, because I think that maybe gives a little bit too much autonomy to these machines, but it is a little bit of a question of, am I okay with things going the way I don't expect them to? And I think for me, that's like realism. That's like an expectation of the world. So understanding that sometimes you're going to ask it to go left and it veers right, and having to make decisions around whether or not you're okay with that or accepting of that, or whether you use that as an opportunity to build off of is kind of important for these tools.
Yeah, I suppose it's interesting thinking, particularly because you mentioned thinking about the history of experimental film and the kind of engagement with that space. There was an artificial intelligence that works for the iFilm Museum in Amsterdam, called YamBot, who produces archival videos from news videos from archival footage. And one of the pieces that the creators of that wrote when they first launched it was about the history of algorithmic filmmaking. And they refer back to the experimental filmmakers that would be considered part of the avant-garde, that were not Brakhage himself, but filmmakers like Peter Kabelka and other people in that area. So do you think of your work as, or working with the AI as kind of an extension of structuralist cinema in that context, or do you just think of it as the fact that it's experimental and you're kind of allowing it to do its own thing, it puts you in that lineage?
That's a good question. I have to say, I don't necessarily always understand the structuralist work that much. So trying to like wrap my head around whether or not I fit into that has always been a challenge. But I do think, artists like Kabelka are a great example where it's purely rhythmic, right? It's like, take 10 frames and take 4 frames and take 11 frames, like that sort of thing is definitely a part of my work. And certainly something that, again, these machines generally don't think in sequences, they think in individual frames. So I think Sundog was mentioning this. A lot of AI filmmaking today is just zooms and pans and that sort of thing, that it doesn't really understand sort of the conceptual idea. And sorry, my cat is screaming at me. So understanding that is a big challenge. Come on, you want to say hi? Let's say hi to everybody. Okay, let's say hi. All right, Bug is now in this session with me. Sorry about that. Yeah, but I think that is. I think that's certainly one avenue you could take with this. And a lot of my work, some of my work that is less using an AI to generate images and more about using an AI to understand the footage I'm working with. So a lot of my found footage work, I think that is where I sort of take on the more structuralist or more, let me tell the machine to generate a sequence for me and let it go and do that work. So it really depends on the project, but I do think like looking at that work from that era is definitely an inspiration and a way to approach future work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so Sundog, sorry, yeah. So the kind of the balance of the AI with your own vision.
Yeah, I think, the realm of art is so vast. So like already I can see two different avenues. Like one avenue where I'm completely abstract and exploring. I'm latent space explorer. I'm trying to get my head around what is latent space and what is this machine thinking and doing in it, and how can I tease it into something way beyond my subliminal script. As a filmmaker, for me, the immensely interesting side of the tool is subliminal script writing. I've got a movie that's got a script that is for live action, right? And then I've got a script for the visuals in it as well. So, you can drop in all sorts of stuff, and I find it fascinating. So in that sense, I'm exploring, and as a happy accident artist, I love that. I love sometimes something doesn't work out right, and you just ended up in a completely different barn, and it's 1,000 times better. So that's that sense. But then there's the other side where we're trying to be in control. We directors really like to be in control, of the green, and this tool is for directors that are happy to let go a lot, to voyage into space a lot. But then at the same time, it's an amazing duping tool. I don't know if anybody knows what the term duping is. Duping is what we used to do in analog photography to upscale, photos. So you take a smaller film and then you put that on top from your lens and you dupe it, and you get bigger and bigger film of the same scan. It's like scanning. So we do that now as well. So, you build a model of my actor, and then I've got tools to stylize and, create onto this person. So, in a way I'm rambling. I think, it's massive what's going on, and one of the studios will be the first to train their own model, and get away with it in some insane technology way. Just a little gap. How these things happen. All of a sudden, it's like it was so far away we couldn't do that. But there we go. And it's making it easier for home filmmakers. Anybody who wants to make a film can, and we can control it, because you just use it more as a scan, use a less of a strength on it. So I've still got the same person's face, you're still controlling. And now with new ControlNet coming out, that's coming into the film notebooks as well. I believe, I haven't played with it, but what I've been hearing is quite incredible, because then you can really structure more form of physical stuff,
Yeah, I got a PR email a few days ago that had someone saying that, they've clearly seen that I'm involved with AI, because this same PR just keeps bombarding me with news stories about AI. But it was someone claiming that within 30 years there will be a blockbuster produced that was entirely made by AI. And I mean, I feel like that might be a bit of a stretch, but it's interesting because as you say, like it feels like that yeah, this is the kind of when someone picks it up, when a studio picks something up and finds a way to train it to do what they need it to do. I mean, there's a to go back to the AI at the iFilm Museum, they're turning him off at the end of this month. So he's done like 6 years of films. He's made like 30,000 films, and they're gonna kill him. And I asked the guys about whether or not they felt that, because he's kind of just trained to ape Sergei Eisenstein's montage techniques, and he kind of makes the same film all over and over again. And I said, do you feel that that's a bit boring? And he kind of said, oh, I don't know. I feel like most filmmakers just make the same film over and over again, but with different pictures. And maybe that means that a blockbuster is a possibility for an AI. One of the things that I guess I was just thinking about then, which was another of the questions that the bot put up, was about the completion of an image. When is an image complete? And I guess it was just you, Sundog, saying about kind of this voyage into the unknown. And I guess particularly when we're talking about generating a new image, that the bot's question was, how do the artists decide when something is complete, if they're allowing that the AI to kind of lead them. So I just wondered if you could just speak a little bit about, I guess, the process, so how do you engage with the AI in your process, and what are the limitations that you're placing on it, and what are you using to train it? I appreciate that'll be different for every project, but kind of a little bit of insight into your process and how you use it would be great. Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I would highlight is that I've been thinking about more and more as I've been trying to sort of contextualize this in the work of film, is that, we're at a place now with AI where you can generate an endless number of sequences, right? Whereas before, you used to be held to a certain number of shots because of budget, amount of film, or however long your SD card could handle. And now we're really at a place where like you could generate stuff forever. And I think we're starting to see like there was that what was it, AI Seinfeld project or AI Friends, I forget which one it was, but it was like a 24-hour endless loop of, not even loop, but endless generation of scenarios. And I think we're also getting to a place of that. And I think that's where the question of like, when is this done, is like, I don't know, whenever I feel like I'm tired of looking at the thing, right? And that's one of the challenges I think we're going to face, is like, a lot of times when I'm making stuff, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'd run it one more time if I get something better out of it. It's like a sort of like a Monte Carlo of just like, am I going to get something better this time, or is it going to be worse? So when you're finished is like, kind of, for me, a lot of it is like, I work a lot off deadlines. So if there's an open call for a film, like I'll try to make something new for that show. I'll use that as my deadline. So I have to finish by now. So that sort of gives me a better timeline of things. But I've also been going back and redoing some of my older works in new formats or new technology to see if it looks better or worse, like that sort of thing. And the answer is it's always a mixed bag. Like sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle and it's just like, I can't repeat this. So I think that's the big challenge for me, is just like all the asset generation. And then I think the other challenge is, as one of the things I would say that maybe differentiates film projects from, say, generative video or something that is more like, screensavery. I hope that doesn't sound derisive, but, the difference there is maybe editing, or as Sundog was mentioning, like a narrative. I don't necessarily work in narrative film, but I do think about editing a lot and how do I cut my sequences. And that's not going to change. I mean, maybe there's a world in which an AI makes editing choices for you. But to me, that's maybe the place that I get to own and I get to work with. So, there's really there's still a lot of core filmmaking capabilities that are required of using these tools. And trying to figure out when you're done is probably something that filmmakers have always thought about, right? That's how you get the director's cut. That's how you get other things out of these films. And there's always a different way of viewing them. So, I don't have a good answer to that other than to say, like, I think we've been struggling with it for a long time, and we'll continue to struggle with it. And it might get worse for a little while.
Sundog, how about you? I mean, in terms of, I guess you spoke about kind of your own, the visual manipulation of the image from your side in terms of, creating imagery. So what's that process like? How do you know when you're ready to step in, when you're throwing in the AI elements?
The AI thing and merging with film, for me, obviously is so new and experimental still. That's one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to finish the film, because I still got a little bit of the carrot that, I need to have. It's got to have a similar kind of look all the way across. But every week we're getting updates and new abilities. When we started, there was no such thing as flow or warp. So yeah. I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's fine.
No, but I'd like to. How am I using the AI? Well, I'm thinking of it like paint. Okay, I'm thinking of, what it's doing is basically it's using noise, the random noise structures that it gets given itself through some algorithm, that it can then use. It's like if you're in the bath and you got a mottled wall, and you start to see all sorts of different things because the noise has got a pattern, and then it starts to make memory fantasy, and that's what I believe this machine's doing. This machine's been trained on memory. Okay, so it's a memory thing of how structure and form is, and because they were originally chatbots, they're very intelligent. You can talk to it in all sorts of languages and stuff, and high PhD language and stuff, and it's now making pictures. So it's a PhD linguist that's now painting from memory, and then I want to, as an artist, see something or manifest something, as a creator, and so I will give it what that gumph is, and there's a scientific structure of how prompts are best laid out, and you work in that formula, and they work pretty damn well, and because it's such a mass producing tool, as we all know, and you go through so much stuff. So what I tend to do is I work with Deforum a lot, and Deforum is a nice notebook because it's got 3 init spaces. So I can use an init as the form or the structure. Depends how close I want to scan and copy it. That's I do my levels to it, and that gives it the noise so it's not a random noise. It's this noise, and I find it gives it a lovely texture. So it just helps. It's a nice paint. And then they've got another one for color, so I'll use another. I've always noticed the AI has got a very wonderful luminescence. Seems to have captured silver film lighting very well. For me, I think the art has got a lovely luminescence about it, and for a digital thing. And I've always kind of tried to experiment to try and find how it's doing that. And through the prompting, it can make like these volumetric spaces and quite trippy, pushes out a 3D of its own, and yeah, it's just a wonderful tool. I try and get the best out of it that I want, but then I'm not so anal anymore. It's like not necessarily about what I want. It's what is going to come out of this rambling of noise and how my poetic structure is, and is abstract. Am I saying things that are abstract form and not necessarily, it's like a poem, it creates different things and joy. And I don't need Netflix anymore. If I'm bored, sometimes I can just come up with a new prompt and hit in and do a batch of 40 and let it run. And I'm like, okay, man, check that out. Wow. Entertainment deluxe, so yeah.
I mean, in that process, I wonder, do you worry at all about your own aesthetic as a maker, and a kind of I guess, the sublimation of that in letting the noise take over and seeing where it goes, or do you find you sometimes need to kind of enforce your visual aesthetic or whatever it might be back onto the work, or do you really just feel you're okay to let go and you don't mind if, you know, two pieces wouldn't seem like they had a kind of identity behind them? I guess that's going back to you straight away, Sundog, but
yeah, I think it's like Derek said earlier, you know, it depends on the project, depends on the theme, depends on what I'm creating, or, you know, what collaboration I'm part of, what's the story. So it's very vast. I do, you know, at the end of the day, we're commanding. Prompting is commanding, you know. So we're starting an action through word, and you can start an action just with like an emoji. You know, you can prompt just with a single emoji, and these things have got so much in their own package. We don't know what that lucky packet is, you know, especially if, like Mid-Journey and stuff like these, you know, the ones that are more closed. You don't really know what they're writing in on top of your script in there. You know, how many tokens have they got that make sure it comes out with that, you know, all perfect glossy Mid-Journey. You know, it's a wonderful tool, absolutely wonderful tool. But yeah, I don't know. As artists, do we always struggle like to find that definitive finish end thing? I mean, we might do. Look, my film's taken going on to a decade now, you know. Sure, it had technical issues and footage getting dumped and what. But the 10-year film god held it back, because when I made it all very stylized. And I always knew I wanted VFX in it, you know. It had to have a little bit something more, you know. I always want more. Give me a little bit more, you know. And so I was teaching myself, you know. I didn't have a studio or anything, or any. I'm in part of the world where we don't have like major pilot season and stuff like that, you know. So not a lot of money floating around to make films here and that. And yeah, so when AI came along, I was like, and I saw the first things that it had done to it. It's actually like some of my director's book early sketch drawings, you know. Some of it's kind of very abstract, and this was early disco diffusion days, you know. This was last year. So some of the stuff was very abstract, not coherent, but we could get some really cool. I think we still get the best coherency, I find, with disco diffusion. You know, stable diffusion and warp diffusion and all these, you know, that are coming now, they're still excessively random. You know, they're like changing frame mind prompt every second, you know, it's just too much, I think, for the film. I mean, it's beautiful. What's happening with AI and the flicker and getting used to. I mean, the flicker's gone away so much since in a year, you know, of film. You know, I don't know if you remember, AI was a very flicker world. And now look at what's coming out. So yeah, they're definitely gonna. And I don't think it'll take 30 years. I think it'll be in the next 10 years. You maybe even faster. A studio will come up with something like that. Completely scan and scrub their own stuff. I don't know. Have any of you guys built any models?
Derek, I'll pass that one to you.
Yeah, I mean, I train a lot of models. I would say the majority of my work is mostly training models and then trying to see what I can make out of them. I recently did a project where, and I think one of the interests of me as I move forward, I think, you know, Ben, to your question about like, you know, do you worry you get stuck into like a style over substance sort of work? And well, I think the style over substance debate is interesting. I also think like, I think every filmmaker or every artist has some at least buckets of topics they're interested in. I think one of the things I'm most interested in at the moment is really that like analog to digital, or the sort of connection between history and what we're doing today sort of work. So I recently did a project where we made phytograms, which is like a way of essentially like a photogram onto film. And I ended up doing that for all summer last year, making about 600 different prints. And I trained a model on that so I could begin to animate with it. So, it's, Sundog talks about the flicker going away. I sort of am leaning into the flicker in many ways and trying to get that stop motion feel. I think that's sort of what's so interesting about this space right now is people will gravitate toward different parts of it. Whether it's, the really abstract, like sort of blobby stuff, or whether it's, the more VFX style, like looks really real. I think that's so interesting is like, it's a tool, but like it used to be, I would say like a couple of years ago, like all AI had a similar look to it. And today where we are is like, it can really look very drastically different depending on what prompt you give it or depending on what you're training it on or other things. So it's getting to a place where it's a lot more sort of expansive and it allows for different artists to approach it in different ways. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that's like, I want to see that happen more. I want to see, to Sundog's previous point, like he's a filmmaker that uses AI. He's not an AI filmmaker. I want to get to a place where like all these tools do different things for different artists and everyone sort of finds the groove of how it works for them. I mean, the reality is like AI stuff is already being used in like big Hollywood productions already, right? Like I think, what is it? David Lynch's, I think Inland Empire, one of his DV films is now being upscaled to Blu-ray using AI tools, right? So like, and DaVinci Resolve has long had AI tools built into them. They just didn't call it that. So I think, in some ways, like AI tools are already here for big Hollywood productions, and they're probably just not promoting it yet. I think whether it reaches the creative side or whether it becomes how all VFX is managed or whatever the case is, I think that's the bigger question. And I think it's one where I think it's going to hit indie filmmakers long before it hits Hollywood studios, just because it's budget-wise, it's way cheaper than, whatever. But Hollywood doesn't really care. Like they've got a ton of money for ILM studios or whatever to do these things. So I think it's why you're starting to see it happen from like the NFT artists and for more indie artists starting there, and it's going to grow and grow and grow until it does probably assume most of the VFX within Hollywood studios and maybe even some of the production side of like script writing or, doing concepts, ideas, that sort of thing. So the reality is it's a more efficient process in a lot of ways. So I think that ends up being the business decision for a lot of things. And I would say we're not there yet to subsume a lot of that work, but it probably will be easier to do in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. There's I saw there was all that furore a couple of weeks ago about the university that ran its coursework through ChatGPT, and it scored higher than its students. It's like an Ivy League business school, and it scored higher than the average student grade. And so lots of academics were up in arms. And I saw one academic online talking about the fact that people were just misunderstanding what power it could have in academia, which was kind of what you're saying, which was about frameworks, about structure. They're like, it's not capable. These things aren't capable of their own thoughts, but they are capable of mimicking a structure which we are asking people to stick to. You're not supposed to be in academic writing. You're not supposed to go off on your own and do your own crazy thing with your structure. You're supposed to hit the marks. Then you have your thoughts, which are breaking outside of those strictures. And so it was kind of an interesting point to make that, there are jobs that it can do, which are maybe less creative within different spaces where we can say, hey, give me a structure for my essay on this. And then you fill in all the blanks, but you maybe use its layout and its headings, and which was just quite an interesting, kind of sideways slant-eye view of how that could be adopted in a positive way rather than all of the scaremongering. But I guess that kind of leads me on to a question that is perhaps more broadly about AI, but I guess would come certainly into any kind of artwork, and that's ideas of authenticity, which is a huge topic, obviously, and we don't have that long to spend an hour debating and discussing it. But I wondered, obviously, all AI models are being trained on large data sets, and a lot of what we see, I asked, as well as asking the bot for questions today, I asked it, can an artificial intelligence create art? And it basically gave me a Wikipedia page response, which I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I kind of think I would get almost that if I went onto Wikipedia. So I guess I wonder, do you wrestle with ideas of how much, or the kind of the idea of authenticity when you're using AI in work, which is trained on other things, on either other images or other models or whatever? Do you feel that there's enough intervention? I guess you already work with archival stuff, Derek, anyway, so that it's a quite interesting question, I guess, for you, given that you're already often reappropriating material. So what are your thoughts on that debate?
Yeah, I actually think like in some ways experimental film is further ahead in the debate about what is acceptable or whether it's ethical to use than AI is. Like when I see people talk about, stealing images from other artists, I think a lot about how a lot of experimental filmmakers have long sort of been gravitated to found footage. And for me, a lot of it comes down to context. A lot of it comes down to, what is the artist trying to say with this material? I have this like punch up, punch down methodology of like, it's okay to punch up toward, rich people, people in power. It's probably less so for me as a white man to try and take from Black artists or that sort of thing, So much of it comes down to context. And I think people want a rubric that is just a simple answer, and there is no simple answer in that regard. I've trained on other people's artwork. I've trained on my own artwork. I've done a lot of, sort of like experimentation with like understanding corpuses based on, AI tools, those sort of things. And to me, like, it really just comes down to, I think, your question of can an autonomous piece of art can it be an artist? Can it make art? And I would sort of say like, I don't know, maybe like it's not necessarily a question that I like worry about too much, because at the end of the day, it's like the tree falling in the forest thing. Like a human needs to actually find value in it at some point. And like at that point, like there's still a human in the process, right? So it's human as audience, or I think in the case of Sundog and I, it's like human as, curator or part of the process. Either we're generating the prompts or we're saying, yes, we like this stuff. No, we don't like this. Will there be a future world where millions upon millions of robots only watch each other's artwork? Maybe. I don't know. Like, it's like, I would not really worry about that today until we get there. But I think everyone is afraid of losing their job, right? Like that's always the challenge when we have these conversations is I'm afraid that I'm going to lose out on money, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose out on my craft, those sort of things. And I recognize that's a real challenge. To me, I see these tools as more empowering because as someone who is an experimental filmmaker that works out of their basement pretty much 24/7, I think this gives me more power and more ability, and it gives my friends who also, maybe are DPs by day but want to really be making their own films, gives them more power to do that stuff as well. And obviously there's power structures with all these tools about who owns them, what are they charging for them, that sort of thing. But to me, I think it's always interesting to me to work with smaller groups of people, like a closer knit family of, creative people, than it would be like a Hollywood production with like thousands upon thousands of people working on a film, right? I just like the idea of like just me and my ideas, and like I get to make stuff and share it with the world for very low costs. And if they vibe with it, they vibe with it. If they don't, like I liked it, so that was what worked for me. And I think that's the power of some of these tools.
Yeah, authentication, authentic. I completely. First, let me start off from the beginning. When I first got the AI footage back from my film from the other AI artist, obviously we had started talking about prompts and working together of what the prompts could be and stuff, and also wanting to always keep a record from every run. You get a nice text file from the AI, and we know what prompt we use, we know what inits we use, we know all our settings and stuff. So when I got the first batch of things back, and I noticed that they were using, like ArtStation trending and trending at, all these art online places that they had scraped, and I completely banned that. You don't use other artists' names and stuff in my film or any of my projects. I personally don't ever use. I really like Leonardo da Vinci, but for ages now I haven't used his name. So I only use my own real life name. You know, if I use Sundog, it tends to flare out the image and stuff. And it's not giving the kind of thing. But I tested, running a prompt with my real life doc's name and without, and it actually made a bit of a difference. So for the authentic, when we as filmmakers, we've all been conned a little bit with social media and everything. We all sign up straight away and we give away the rights to all of our work. And we've been doing it for the last couple of decades. Everybody who posts anything online, anywhere, Facebook, Instagram and stuff, you've put it in the public domain and you've given these big corporate companies the rights to do what they want with it, chop it up and use it in their advertising stuff. And this is what they decided to do. They decided to give it to the AI companies. And the fact that it's quite a big fashion and stuff to be using names and stuff, which blew the thing out of a bit of proportion, and there's a misunderstanding of exactly what the technology is doing. Sure, it can copy. It's a brilliant copycat. It's fucking artificial intelligence. I'm sure it can copy a lot of things, pretty damn well. But that's not what it's doing as far as I've known in its technology of how it diffuses, So I completely, as a fine artist, I studied fine art, I agree with the sentiment. I don't agree with the hate sentiment. It's the first time we've seen creators turn on each other. I mean, even in major world wars, the artists never really turned on each other, So it's been a bit of a sad thing, but I tend to stay out of it, and I don't need to be too vocal about my own personal views of it. I'm using the technology, and I see the ethics of it. I see the fear of what's been used in the other aspects of it, not just the arts, in the medicinal and the military and all those kind of places. It's quite scary if you see how it's basically just a machine that's got a basic memory structure, and it can fuck up. Like ChatGPT can say stupid shit, and why? It's because some stupid dumb fuck trained it like that, human error, and what it's scraped and it's just made up. It's some kind of thing. So pretty scary. It's been a wonderful journey, joining the AI community and the VR and the XR community, with AI and AR and all these different new things that are, coming for us as filmmakers, and just being able to go to these spaces over the last year and just listen to all these people that are top of their game, head of the world, creating this place, and this creating these tools, chatting away, that you could put your hand up and say, hey, so what did you mean by that quantum disco, blah, 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 and you'll get a good blah, blah, So it's a fascinating arena, and I don't think, it's been good. Every new technology is going to wobble the water, and it's wobbled the water, and people have thrown their spades and stuff, and some of the models have been scrubbed and recleaned or retrained or whatever they say they do, and how they can do that with that kind of data and stuff. But we're this birth of an era, of a century. This machine is going to do some incredible things and leap forward humanity, I think, in lots of ways beyond us as artists and tools and stuff, and so it's a difficult one. I just don't think people should be bitching and screaming and shame. I mean, some of those artists' names that were put into the notebooks were actually just put there by a dev who liked the artist's name and decided to leave it as a fucking, not a reference, as an example. Never ever said you should use his name, but you're supposed to change everything in the code there, dude. It's your thing. So yeah. Yeah. I tend to try and stay away from it. Keep it lighthearted. It's art is art. From the scribble in the sand from your child, the first time it walks, that memory in your brain will be art that being created. So it's subtle, and it's for everybody, and each and everybody in their own. And it's like galleries. If you don't like it, we're not shouting in here in any case, mate. You've got to whisper. Yeah. I hope I'm still making sense.
I mean, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I guess that kind of leads me on to what was going to be my final question, and it could, time wise, we're probably just about there as well. But it was about kind of about the future, and I guess this could be. This doesn't have to be kind of a prediction, but I'm kind of interested in hearing from you both about how you think the use of AI or the relationship between artists and AI are currently developing. What are the things that are next to happen, or what are the things that you're seeing happening at the moment that are going to become big? I get, it's just be interesting to hear from people who are kind of already working on that cutting edge. What's next? What are the next couple of years looking like? Aside from Marvel being able to get an AI to write the next Captain America or whatever.
Go for it, Derek.
I mean, I'll say, I think, one of the things I'm seeing is that these tools are becoming more production ready, Hollywood level. I don't know, maybe in some ways that actually makes me kind of sad, because I think like what I kind of like is how rough and experimental some of these things feel. I fully predict that in 5-10 years, people will think about these tools just like they think about Photoshop. There'll be a small ardent group of people that are still anti-Photoshop, people are like, I just raw photos only, that sort of thing. And I think they'll have a space where they can do their work. And I think the rest of us will work with these professional tools and probably not really think much about it. And I think that's, it's going to be good and bad. I think there will be people who use the tools maybe in ways that I wouldn't want them to. And there are other people who will find really fascinating, really creative ways to use the tools. And I think, that's just, we're kind of in this, as Sundog said, we're kind of in this fun era where we're getting to see people that really experiment almost in real time with them, and try to figure things out. And, we've got a bunch of those history of these sort of things happening, right? Of, the camera coming out, various digital tools, video tools, those sort of things. So, it's a really fun time to be a part of the space. And I think we'll just further see more and more definition happen at different scales. We'll see the indie scale, we'll see the professional scale, we'll see, people work full time with these tools, which is already happening to be fair. But yeah, we'll just see more and more of this happen. I think we'll see reactions to it, and we'll see people lean into it, and that will create just more art and more interesting art, in my opinion.
So what is the question again? How do I see the future of AI and art?
Yeah. I guess just what do you see, or even just what are you seeing at the moment, which is kind of leading us towards the future, even if you're not kind of wanting to predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Just what are the kind of cutting edge things that you're seeing that you find exciting at the moment?
Well, I mean, if I wanted to be innovative and take something that's happening now and push it further for us, I would say motion nerfs. Nerf technology and photography is exploding, and some incredible little things you can do, but they're still like a matrix still image, it's still a 3D kind of structure. So once somebody cracks motion nerf, imagine the films you could make after you've shot just with 2 or 3 cameras and then nerfed it. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's AR. I don't know what they'll get with that. I'm seeing some wonderful stuff that photographers and motion photographers are using AR on top of their prints. So you've got something added to it when you view it through the AR goggles, or it's just a photograph or motion photograph. Lead, this guy's doing that. Technologies, I mean, we just about to crack absolute coherency on live action footage. So we might see a lot of kind of like what I'm doing, rebashing of old content, reusing, remastering, with a whole new skin, a metaverse skin on on the films. So we'll probably see quite a lot more animation films coming out like that. That's basically just mapping on old live action film. That film I was talking about earlier that we shot, Bambi AI. We never managed to get to the end line for that 48 hours. Editing always my Achilles heel on 48 hours is the editing. It's just, it all comes to a crash, Shame, and people work so hard, it's just the editing. I don't know. I think it's unlimited right now. I mean, what is the AI going to create? What is it going to start creating besides the fact we know that it creates its own code and talk to itself, and these like myth stories of the AI can hide its knowledge away from the scientists, and it's all scare day stuff, So yeah, I think nerfs fascinates me as the technology going forward. Obviously the AI, keeping up with the friggin' AI. Keeping up. Anyway, yeah, so I look forward to seeing your films on this festival. I look forward to seeing what you have up.
Yeah, I mean, so sorry, yeah, my cat's turn to interrupt the broadcast.
Hello, cat.
Yeah, it's actually just interesting hearing you talk about I was kind of thinking about this a little bit earlier, but our conversation yesterday that we had in the kind of panel slot was about film 3, and kind of it's just interesting to hear about the way that the AI kind of exists, I guess, in a similarly exciting space that potentially can shape the future even of big budget cinema, but at the moment it is being utilized in a kind of communal democratizing way, which is really exciting to hear, particularly in the context of a Metaverse festival. But I hope you guys enjoy the films that we've got on show as well. I know Derek, that you're familiar with Amy Cutler's work. We've got Amy Cutler's film showing tomorrow. There are only a couple that have actually been made in collaboration with AI. So others are kind of narratives more around the topics, but then we kind of morph into a couple of films at the end, which are AI created to some degree or other. So very, very exciting. But yeah, I mean, it's been amazing talking to you both about your work and about your thoughts on this medium. And for those of you watching at home, I've given a very brief prelude there, but please, stay tuned for the shorts program later on, which is called "Behold This Strange Intelligence." And otherwise, it just leaves me to say thanks very much to Derek and Sundog for your time this evening and joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. It was good conversation. Nice to meet you, Derek.
You as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.